Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to order. And Mr. Charlevoix has once again graciously offered to read the preamble.
I have no idea why I did that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variances and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the proposal that is before us, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the committee, after consultation with the Secretary-Treasurer, will set a new hearing date. No further notice will be provided unless there are changes to the application. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. The owner or authorized agent will be given the opportunity, if so desired, to briefly explain to us the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise out of the hearing. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for this presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record. Any materials submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All persons attending the hearing who wish to support or oppose the application must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chairperson of the committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee also. If there are several speakers sharing the same view, please select a spokesperson to present the group's opinion. We do want to hear your views, however, covering the same point will not advance your case. Afterwards, the owner or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the owner or agent has any concerns found in staff reports, particularly with any proposed conditions, this is your opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into the committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Once the committee makes an oral decision, any person desiring a copy must file with the Secretary-Treasurer at this meeting a written request for notice of the decision. A green sheet is provided at the back of the room for this purpose. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed not later than 10 days for a minor variance and 15 days for consents to the applicant, the owner and or agent, and any other person who filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last day to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding. The Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant through written correspondence. People attending this committee meeting are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and the other people in attendance tonight. Tonight's meeting will be video recorded and available for future viewing on the town's YouTube channel, and we ask that cellular phones be switched off during this meeting as they tend to interfere with the audio system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charlevoix. We'll note that Sherry McHale sends her regrets tonight. And members, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, turn to the audience and ask if there's any requests for deferrals or withdrawals tonight. Yes, sir. We'll get your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Raid Rawi. I'm the agent. My address is 5147 Preservation Circle, Mississauga, Ontario. I'm here on behalf of my client for 1383 Rhine Avenue, and we would like to request a deferral based on the town staff comments and discussions with the town staff made regarding the amount of variances and the way it happens. This happened during the development of the drawings, resulting in further variances that were not supported by the staff. So we are going to revise and resubmit in a proper way that would be satisfactory for the staff.
Thank you. Just ask if there's anyone in the audience that was here for the application on Wren Avenue tonight. Okay, I'm going to assume you're in opposition.
Excuse me, do you have a microphone that works? Can't even hear this fellow.
Well, it's on, sir, so I'll try to speak up. Okay. Sir, if,
It's very awkward. Are you going through the schedule as per the
Okay,
plan?
sorry,
You get
sir.
to Wren further on.
Sorry, sir, I asked, as our procedure calls for, we asked for any requests for deferrals first, and that's what we're dealing with right now.
Okay, fine.
We are not dealing with this application.
And we didn't hear the gentleman who addressed you, I'm afraid. Is this in connection with Wren Avenue?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Is he asking for a deferral or what?
Yes, he is, sir.
On what grounds? Do we know?
Okay, sir, you can't just speak from the audience, so.
I know.
So-
You want me to come up there?
No.
Right. So I can't speak.
Okay. So committee members, we have a request for deferral in this application. Any comments on the deferral request? Seeing none. So I'll just ask again the people in the back, so the committee is going to defer this application unless you have something to say with respect to the deferral request only, not the application itself. Okay, seeing none. So,
Excuse me again. I'm terribly
Okay, sir,
sorry. I
you-
don't want to keep interrupting.
well,
you.
sir, you can't,
Very
please,
rude.
please come up to the microphone then. You can't
Okay.
speak from the audience.
The problem is,
Okay, sorry, sir. If you're
my
going to
name's
speak.
Alan Tong. I'm at 545 Valley Drive, Oakville.
Thank you.
This one?
Yes.
It works?
Okay.
It does.
So the only thing we want to hear from you about is you have a comment with respect to the deferral of the application on Wren Avenue.
I understand that, and I will adhere to that. We just didn't hear what the deferment was being justified, why it was being justified,
Okay.
why it was being requested.
He's requesting the deferral because the staff did not support his application. So he's asking for a deferral to go back, speak with staff, and amend his application.
So it'll be come
It'll
up
be
again at
brought
a further
back.
meeting.
Yes.
So it's finished for this evening, right?
Yes, it will be.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, sir, so committee's granting you your deferral request. Seeing that you need time to revise your drawings and speak with staff, once you are ready to come back, you contact the Secretary Treasurer for the next available meeting date.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Any other requests for deferral or withdrawal tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed with the regular agenda. So in an attempt to move this along, we're going to deal with the first 5 items as a single package, which is the 2 consent applications and the 3 variance applications on the former hospital lands, applications B 1805, B 1806, CAV A 059, 060, and 061. Have the applicant come forward, please.
Good afternoon.
Give your name and address, please.
My name is Nicole Wolf. I work for the town of Oakville as a manager of capital projects, and I live in Oakville, in Mississauga, 770 Embassy Avenue, Mississauga.
Thank you. Just ask if there's anyone in the audience here tonight with an interest in these applications. Okay, just calling one more time. I don't see anybody. Committee, procedural bylaw allows us to dispense with presentation. Would you like a presentation? Do you have any questions for the applicants? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to ask for a motion. I'm going to ask for 5 motions, but I think we'll deal with them one at a time. So if we get a motion for consent application B 1805.
All right.
Mr. Charlebois.
Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town staff report, and also taking into account that there's no one here from the public either in support or objecting, I find that this particular request for consent is satisfactory. And having considered the matters set out under Section 5124 of the Planning Act as amended, I believe the application does conform to the official plan and the zoning bylaws. And I recommend that the first consent, B 1805, be approved subject to the provision the applicant must fulfill all the conditions under Schedule A.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois.
Do you want me to, shall we vote on each one, or?
I think we should. Yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Nobody opposed. That application is approved. Mr. Charlebois.
So, Mr. Chair, continuing on, without going through my preamble, with respect to consent B 1806, again, having considered the matters set under Section 5124 of the Planning Act, I believe that this application does conform to the official plan and the zoning bylaws, and recommend that the application be approved subject to the provision that the applicant must fulfill all the conditions under Schedule A.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve? Seeing nobody opposed, that consent is also approved.
All right, moving on then to the first request for variance, CAV A059 2018. I find that the particular variance does meet the 4 tests on the Planning Act, and I'm going to make it, this is where I wanted to hesitate. Are we going to make it subject to our standard condition where we will require development within 2 years? Because that will be fun. No. Therefore, I will not impose any conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Discussion, Mr. Hardcastle? All those in favor of the motion? Seeing none opposed, that motion carries.
Moving on to variance CAV A059, or sorry, 060 2018. Again, I find that this particular variance request does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and put forward a motion that be approved subject to no conditions.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Nobody opposed, that motion carries.
And finally, the last variance, CAV A061 2018. Again, I find it meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. I put forward a motion that be approved subject to no conditions.
Thank you. One last time, Mr. Hardcastle. All those in favor of the motion to approve? Seeing nobody opposed, congratulations, all 5 of your applications are approved.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving forward now to CAV A053 2309 Sovereign Street. What's your name and address, please, sir?
Good evening, members of the committee and staff, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarwat Ahmad. I am the agent for the owner, Fazal Karim Tahir. Address is 2309 Sovereign Street, Oakville. My client bought this property in January, and they have a large family with 2 brothers and aged parents. And when we were designing their house, we realized that because of the zoning constraints, we could not accommodate the 5 bedrooms which they required for this, and keeping in view the cost of construction and the value of the property, if they have to move somewhere else, then it will be more costly for them. So that's why they are seeking more floor area for their to accommodate their whole family together. We have one letter of support from one of the neighbors. Actually, they approached me rather than we approached them, so they are in full support of this development. Thank you. I'm the agent.
But you don't live at, you said you lived at this.
No, this is my address. Yeah, thank you.
Sir, have you read the staff report?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any comments to make on the position of staff?
I feel that the zoning has one comment that about the density of the lot, but as an architect, my observation is that people still can cheat the density by increasing the volume of the house and then creating the voids, and then later on they fill in the floor area. So I think uh, since the footprint of the building is within that limit of the zoning, it's only the second floor which they are increasing the volume of the building and to accommodate more floor area and the more bedroom. So therefore, it should not be significant to the zoning, overall zoning plan of the city of Oakville or whatever your long-term plan is.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Hardcastle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The staff have made some comments with respect to the conformance of the plans with the urban design guidelines for stable residential communities. Would you be able to speak a little bit more specifically to that in terms of the design of the house and the applicable guidelines?
As I said, that the footprint of the building, the ground floor, is within that lot coverage limit. It's only the second floor which we want to seek more area, which is about 2.5% of the allowable limit. So I think it will not affect significantly to the neighborhood or the overall master plan of Oakville.
Any further questions? Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application that would like to address the committee? Okay, sir, if you could just step away for a minute, and we'll ask you to come up.
Hello, I'm Deborah Pegg.
And I'm Stuart Pegg.
We live in Collingwood, but we have owned the property right next door, 2303 Sovereign Street, since I had this in my mind, 76. Gone through a lot of transitions where I went to live in Meaford, Collingwood, to take care of parents and that sort of thing. My husband got a job up there. We kept the house, friends lived in it, and now our daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren live in it. And when he's done work in about a year, we really want to retire back to that area. So we, as you guys, would like to know where that extra 2% of using the land is going to lie with regards to ours. And we liked the report that you had written in terms of trying to keep in character. We live in a bungalow. It's an L-shaped bungalow. We intend to keep it a bungalow. Try to keep it. And mature trees are really important to us. So hopefully there will be trees maintained along the street line and whatever they can in the backyard as well. Anything?
That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the delegates? No? Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to address the committee on this application? Okay, sir, if you'd like to come back and maybe address the comments from the neighbors?
Yes, sir. I share their concern, but as I said, that the ground floor, the footprint of the building is same within that allowable limit of the bylaws. It's only the second floor which we are increasing 2%, and it will not affect the overall density of the neighborhood and the privacy of the neighbors. So we will make sure when we design the building, there will be no overlooking windows to your house and to the other neighbors. And as I said, that it would be a good-looking building rather than at the present whatever the building is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will close the discussion and entertain a motion from the committee. Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having this neighborhood seems to be there's a couple of new houses in the neighborhood. My observations, and I think that's borne out by the staff report to some degree, is that the new houses are relatively modest in terms of their size, scale, and mass. I believe that this house is, the architectural design of the house is not consistent with the design guidelines and does not do a very good job in terms of breaking down the mass that is proposed. Based upon my review of the materials, including the staff report, and the information that I've heard from the residents that are present, I'm going to put forward a motion to refuse the application, finding that it does not conform to the 4 tests of the Act. And I note that there were residents present that spoke negatively with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Any discussion on that motion to deny? None. All those in favor of the motion to deny the application? Nobody opposed? I'm sorry, sir, but your application has been denied.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now hear CAV A064 1042 Cedar Grove Boulevard. Your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is TJ Sakura. I'm a planner and principal of Design Plan Services, the authorized agent on this application.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application that would like to address the committee tonight? Seeing none. Members, would you like a presentation? Any questions? No? In that case, willing to entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having reviewed the staff report and the submission materials and undertaken my site visit, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act, and I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated April 13th, 2018 as submitted, and the second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present to make a deputation with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor? Nobody opposed? Your application is approved, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you.
We'll now hear CAV A066 193 Nelson Street. The applicant can come forward, please. Get your name and address, please, sir.
Hello, my name is Mike Guston. My address is 193 Briar Hill Crescent, Ancaster. I'm the owner at 193 Nelson Street. I'm preparing to submit for permit for renovation for an additional dwelling at the property, which requires me to have 4.5 parking spots, rounded up to 5. The current bylaw requires that I have a shared entry and exit driveway of 5.5 meters over the property line, and the current condition is 5.37 meters. So my request for variance is for the 13 centimeters difference.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application tonight that would like to address the committee? Okay. Seeing none. Committee members, would you like a presentation on this application? Okay, thank you. So I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, having reviewed the materials, heard the information from the owner, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the test of the Act. This is acknowledging an existing condition. So I'm satisfied that the Act requirements have been addressed, and I'll put forward a motion of approval. Given that there is no construction directly associated with this, this would be subject to no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Nobody opposed? Your application is approved, sir.
Thank you.
We'll now hear CAV A067, 1 Chartwell Road. Get your name and address, please.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Cynthia Gibson. I'm with Hicks Design Studio at 295 Robinson Street in Oakville.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to the committee on this application? Seeing none. Committee members, would you like a further presentation? No. Mr. Hardcastle, you've got 2 more motions to go to even the score.
Thank you for the challenge, Mr. Chairman. I will, having reviewed the materials, undertaken my site visit, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. And as such, I will put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the proposed accessory buildings be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated April 6, 2018 as submitted. The second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve? Nobody opposed. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now hear CAV A069, 531 Warminster Drive. Good evening.
Good evening, Sir Chair and committee members. My name is Dylan Dewsbury and I'm from Design Plan Services located at 900 the East Mall, and I'm here representing the owners of 531 Warminster Drive.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application? Are you in opposition? Here for interest? Okay, if you proceed with the presentation, please.
Is the projector on? Yeah? Oh. So the applicant is seeking to build a 2-storey replacement home. The dwelling complies with the zoning bylaw in all aspects with the exception of residential floor area. Relief is being sought to permit an increase from 41% to 43.66%. This neighbourhood is currently in a transition period between the original single-storey dwellings and the newly constructed 2-storey dwellings. And that includes 3 within about 100 metres of this house and many more in the broader neighbourhood. So the lot itself backs onto a school site at the rear and a pedestrian right-of-way to the west, which is down here. The building has been designed to be sympathetic to the neighbourhood. That's the front facade. So architectural elements have been included in order to break up the building and limit the effect of massing. So we see the gables and different depths of those front facades as well, as shown on the side elevation here. Single-storey features have been incorporated into the side facades to aid in the transition between the single-storey dwellings to the east. The dwelling is situated on the lot in a way that maintains the pattern in the street, as it is in line with the front of the neighbouring properties and does not protrude into the established rear yards. This has also been done to maintain this mature oak tree to the rear of the property. Additionally, the pedestrian right-of-way to the west allows for a significant setback to the adjoining property on that side. The proposed minor variance will not adversely impact neighbouring properties or the streetscape, and the design is sympathetic to the character of the transitioning neighbourhood. In our opinion, the variance sought is minor in nature, maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and is desirable for the appropriate development of the land. We believe this application meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act, and we respectfully request that the committee approve these variances. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you or the neighbours may have.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? Okay, if we could just ask you to take a seat, sir, and we'll ask for anyone in the audience that would like to address this application to come forward.
Good evening. Dave Quigley. I live at 527 Warminster Drive, which is directly south of the 531. My concern is that when a builder buys these homes, like the lots, they know right away what the footage is allowed. When you're paying money for plans and everything, would you pay money for somebody who sends you one back that's over what your allowable lot is? Even though it's only 2.66% over, I still don't get it where these builders, like the homes in this neighborhood, don't fit into the neighborhood. There's ones 2 doors down, 2 doors south of me that has no design concept whatsoever for what that neighborhood is. And allowing these builders, just because they figure that 2.66, that's a minor variance, I'm going to apply for it, and they're not going to turn me down. But it's just getting ridiculous that there's bylaws in place, and I just like the town to stick with them instead of just allowing them. He had to have building plans drawn up, knowing what the square footage of that home was going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Charlois, did you have a question for the delegate?
No, it wasn't a question, but I was going to make a comment. I think you noticed one of the ones that got denied earlier on this evening was denied for the same reason that this particular applicant is in front of us. So I just want to be clear that we look at each case individually, as we will this one here, and determine it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Charlevoix. Do you have any further comments to make?
Yes, I've actually visited the site myself, and I can absolutely see what Mr. Quigley's talking about. This is the house 2 doors down, and I have to agree, I don't think this design is in keeping with the neighbourhood at all. Unfortunately, it must have been approved without minor variances, but as you can see, it still has a significant impact on the neighbourhood. With the big kind of blank side walls, there's no traditional elements there at all. So we were mindful, I guess, when when the architect was designing this house, to keep the neighbourhood in mind, and that transition is a delicate subject, I guess. The whole neighbourhood is being redeveloped slowly, whether through minor variance applications or not. There's also another couple. This one was designed perhaps a little better with a few more architectural features, but the side is still fairly blank. And this one, it's not showing up all that well. However, we believe that our house transitions between the single stories and the new 2 stories much better. And on Mr. Quigley's side, we have single story elements to the front, and we were careful not to go too far back into the rear yard so that it doesn't protrude into the existing rear yards of the neighbouring properties. That sums up my points that I'd like to make. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Okay. Committee, you've heard the neighbor indicate that he doesn't believe these properties fit into the neighborhood. You've heard the applicant's explanation that their design is far more sympathetic than the other houses that have been built recently in the area. With that, I'm happy to entertain a motion. One more, Mr. Hardcastle.
I'm getting tired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, well, I'm appreciative of the comments that I've heard from Mr. Quigley. and appreciate the impacts that the new homes in the area will pose upon existing homeowners and the influence of the character of the area. I think that the design of this building is undertaken efforts to address the design guidelines and to break down the mass, particularly along the front street edge and south elevations. And based upon that architectural detailing, I believe that the requested variance is in fact minor in nature and conforms to the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. And I will be supporting the requested variance. In a supportive motion, I'll put forward 2 conditions. The first being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated April 19th, 2018 as submitted. And the second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were members of the public present who spoke in opposition to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Discussion on the motion? Mr. Charlevoix.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to weigh in on this particularly just because we did have this this objection. And sort of continuing on my initial statement that each house is looked at individually. When I look at a particular house like this, I see that the architect has managed to design the house completely in accordance with the zoning bylaws. In that, I shouldn't say the zoning bylaw, I should say the building envelope, and that the building's width, its depth, its height, its setback from the street, its rear lot, all of that conforms, but somehow he's managed to tweak it a little bit so he gets a little bit of extra living space within the building. When someone comes to us like that, the very first thing that we look at, though, is although you managed to do that, how did you do it? Did you do it by creating a building that just looks incredibly ridiculous from the street, or did you manage to do it with designing a building that follows the architectural design guidelines of the town of Oakville? Because it's everybody's right to apply for a variance as a citizen here, and we try and balance the needs of the applicant, the neighbors, and as well as the town. And in this particular case, I do note that the town has approved this one. And I find too with my colleague here that the design of this building is quite nice. I really do think it incorporates a lot of great things, and I think it'll be compatible with the rest of the neighborhood now and in the future. So I'm going to support this motion also.
Thank you, Mr. Charlevoix. All those in favor of the motion to approve? Nobody opposed. Your application is approved.
Thank you, Sir Chair.
Now here, CAV A070145 Waterstone Court.
Good evening. My name is Dina Gali. I'm here representing the owner. I work for Gasucci Architect. I live in 268 Velwood Common, Oakville.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application, Waterstone Court? Seeing none. Committee members, would you like a presentation on this matter?
May I just say that there was a letter in opposition from the condominium representative, and he subsequently sent an email in support. So I'd like to submit that in.
Okay. That'd be very helpful. So you did your homework and got the position changed?
Actually, yeah, there's an email also enclosed from the owner explaining to Mr. Kirky why he wants the walkout in the basement, and he found it reasonable. That's why he changed his position.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Yes, you are. Mr. Chair, I'm back. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission with the town, and also taking into account the correspondence that's been here, and I should also note that this particular application held some concern for me. I had some correspondence with the town with respect to the validity of the application, the condo corporation being able to object or not. Without going into all that detail, I was convinced from the town's legal department that this application was valid and it was the right thing to do, and I just want that for the record. And in addition, it's good to see that the particular condo corporation, even as a concerned citizen and not under their rights as a condominium, because they had no rights to object to this under the condominium, but they can object as a concerned citizen. It's good to see from this email that they've pulled back, because I think they had a misunderstanding of what you were going to do. So on the basis of that, I find that your application does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm going to recommend approval, subject to the condition that the proposed basement walkout be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated April 12, 2018 and submitted, and subject further to the condition that the approval will expire 2 years from the date of this decision if the proposed development does not proceed or a building permit is not issued.
Thank you, Mr. Charlevoix. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Nobody opposed? Your application is approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay. CAV A177-149 Forsyth Street. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of committee. For the record, my name is TJ Sakura. I'm a planner and principal with Design Plan Services here on behalf of the owners for the subject property.
I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that we need a presentation, because there may be a person or two with an interest in this application.
Yes.
I'm seeing nodding heads.
And we are aware of, I believe it was a written submission to the committee with a petition of names. So, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to make some brief comments on each of the variances and identify them as they pertain to the design of this dwelling and the constraints of this lot. I'll show you some 3D renderings of the dwelling, and then I'm happy to hear the comments from the public, answer any questions from the committee or the public, and then have you take this into committee. Variance number 1 is to permit access stairs associated with a porch with a maximum encroachment to a minimum yard of 0 from the applicable lot line. So what I've done is I've highlighted each of the variances in their geographic location. Variance number 1 pertains to the riser at the front of the house that actually leads out as a typical walkway would to the municipal sidewalk. That stair is not permitted to encroach into the front yard setback. One thing I will say, and I don't want to say this many times throughout the presentation, however, this is a significantly constrained lot. This is, in my opinion, exactly what the Committee of Adjustment exists for. If the Committee of Adjustment didn't review applications like this lot is almost undevelopable. There could probably be a very small dwelling permitted on this lot. Even before I go in any further, significant work has been done with Conservation Halton to obtain a Conservation Halton permit. They have approved of this design. You can see this would be the lot line. However, the top of bank is up here and applied to a setback from that top of bank. There is virtually no lot left to develop a house on this property. So, in pushing the house to the street, this encroaches into the required setback, and that is variance number 1. Variance number 2 is to permit a parking space located in a private garage with a length of 5.49 meters, where 5.7 meters would be permitted. Again, the garage is 5.49 meters in length. This is already past the top of bank. The developable area of the lot. Conservation Halton recognizes that you need to have space on the lot to park a vehicle, so they have agreed that that is not an unreasonable location for that parking space. We just can't make it 5.7 meters. We're trying to stay as much as possible within the developable area of the lot. Variance number 3, to permit a private garage setback of 0.29 meters where private garage has a vehicle entrance facing the front lot line. That is this 0.29 meter dimension. It is the front face of the garage to the lot line. It is 0.29 meters, and obviously, again, it's a result of a condition of this being such a narrow lot. Narrow developable area of the lot. Variance number 4 is to permit a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.12 meters at the south side of the lot. That would be the 1.12 meters is in this location, and again, it's just to provide a adequate side yard, so it's just shy of 4 feet, but it is to facilitate a built form on this property that can be a viable, marketable, developable, livable house on this property. And variance number 5, to permit a minimum interior side yard of 0.6 meters on the north side, so that is from the property line to the garage on this side. Variance number 6 is to permit a maximum residential floor area ratio of 59.33, where 43% is permitted. The only point, or the main point I would make about this, Mr. Chair, is that only the top of bank area is allowed to be used to calculate that percentage. If the entire lot was allowed to be used, this house would sit at 27.8%, well below the permitted maximum coverage. What you can also see is that a 206 square meter residential floor area is roughly a 2,100 square foot house. This is not a 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot house on this lot. And the final variance would be to permit a minimum floor area of 178.86. That pertains to a zoning bylaw requirement that the only thing that's permitted on this lot is what is already on this lot. And the existing house, you can see the underline under here, sits in this location, and then there's a detached garage in this location. So the existing house is 178.86. However, if you add on the garage, what is being proposed here in floor area and coverage is no bigger than the existing built form on the site. It's the house plus the garage together. One thing I will show you is how much care has been taken. This, again, was a very constrained site. This is the front facade. This is a carport. It was proposed as a garage. However, working with city staff or town staff, the garage door was removed. Therefore, a vehicle can come off of the municipal right-of-way right into a carport, not having to queue or stop on the road prior to entering onto the garage. My 5 minutes are up. I'm just going to conclude by saying that there's been a significant amount of work put into this application, both with Conservation Halton and with town planning staff. I want to thank both of those departments and agencies for working with us to come to an application that we believe is reasonable and can permit a reasonable dwelling on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. You indicated you were aware of the petition. Have you spoken with the neighborhood before tonight?
Yes, there have also been neighbors who have signed a petition in support. I believe that was put on record prior to this evening. The petition that came out with some opposition was only, I saw it 2 days ago. It was frankly a surprise to the owners of the property. This is to be an owner-occupied dwelling. This is not for developer to sell, a builder. This is a family building this house. They own this property and wish to move and live here. They have tried to work with the neighbors as much as possible. However, seeing the significant constraints on this property, there's really not a lot of opportunity to address all of the concerns of the neighbors.
Thank you. Committee questions for the applicant? Okay. If we can ask you to take a seat. Members of the audience, you've heard the presentation. If anyone would like to address the committee, and now's your time to do so. Yes, sir, in the back. Come on down. Okay, your name and address.
Chairman, members of the committee. If I might, I'll read
Could we get your name and address, sir?
Yes, it's part of my intro, so I can start if I might.
Certainly.
Good evening, my name is Rick Riordan. My wife and I own 150 Forsyth Street, the house directly across from 149 Forsyth Street, owned by Sean and Carol Morris. A couple of weeks ago, residents from the surrounding neighborhood were sent a document by email from the Morrises named the 149 Forsyth Update, where they were explained the challenges posed by Halton Conservation over the past 18 months in their effort to gain approval to build a home on the sliver of property between Forsyth Sidewalk and 16 Mile Creek Bank, a structure that would be deemed safe and compliant with all things considered. I want to start by saying that we applaud the Morrises, as already expressed to them directly, for their perseverance in taking on this project. Clearly, they like the style of the proposed house they intend to build, and from their vantage, it will be quite a showpiece in the neighborhood. Neighborhood, by its very meaning, suggests a sharing of space beyond the aspect of individual properties. We are a community and share the borrowed views of sightlines around us. Many of the residents of West Harbor are concerned about the mass and scale of this addition to our streetscape. In response to Sean and Carol Morris's new bill proposal for 149 Forsyth and their request for local residents to sign a petition of support agreeing to their proposal and variances, the residents of what we call the West Harbor Quadrant, Rebecca to Bond, Forsyth to Wilson, were faced with a number of questions and concerns which were discussed among the neighbors and directly engaging the Morrises as well. Those of us who weren't inclined to sign their petition of support last Thursday presented to the Planning Department a document called a Respectful Petition to Reconsider the Proposed Residential Design for 149 Forsyth Street. Given the short time we've had to review the Morrises' update, gather our collective thoughts, distill everyone's concerns, and gather signatures around everyone's busy work life and family schedules, there simply wasn't time to align our concerns to the deep and wide details of the Livable Oakville official plan. The Town of Oakville Planning Department has pointed out the errors in our initial or original petition of last Thursday and subsequently has redirected concerned residents to appropriate resources. Please understand, for those who move to an area of Oakville because we like its character and charm, defining our reasons to protect what we all bought into within the construct of the town's many varied and somewhat vague definitions can be both daunting and exasperating, especially for those of us who rarely engage with these policies. So while our concerns raised in our respectful petition are of no concern to the Town Planning Department or Committee of Adjustment, on behalf of the neighbors represented, some 31 signatures, I will endeavor to align our collective concerns to the best of our abilities, somewhat with questions and sometimes with concerns or points to be considered. So under the Livable Oakville Plan 11.1.9, it says development within all stable residential communities shall be evaluated using the following criteria to maintain and protect the existing neighborhood character. The built form of development, including scale, height, massing, and I would put emphasis on architectural character and materials, is to be compatible with those surrounding the neighborhood, in the surrounding neighborhood. While not designated as a heritage district, the West Harbor Quadrant is uniquely populated with prominent number of historic or original Oakville homes 100 years plus, as well as a number of new builds in either cottage or same era architectural style and size. Complementing the prevailing character of this 4-block neighborhood, the proposed structure is in contrast to that character and scale, mass proportion to the property size. We understand the challenges of the property. Our understanding is that the plan has certain guidelines that speak to the neighborhood density and character. New builds should be in keeping with the current overall atmosphere, and any impact on density, light, shadowing, and privacy should be minimal. The way in which the mass of this house has been forced to the street, given the desired variances in size, doesn't permit breaks in the pitched roof lines, gables with pitched roof lines, gables, dormers, or any break from the surrounding view to integrate. The proposed structure is not in accord with the current overall character of the neighborhood. The dozen or so photographs presented to the neighboring homes illustrate that point made. If I might put, I have a photograph that I can put here, I guess. Is that okay?
Just place it where it says place document.
I'm sorry?
Just put it on where it says place document.
Thank you.
And it should show up on the screen. And then the
Not sure
Secretary
what the
Treasurer is going to
orientation
confiscate
would
it from
be.
you.
Is that helpful?
Yes. Sir, are you representing the group?
I am.
Okay, so your time is up, but if you're representing the group, we'll give you a little more time to complete.
I'm sorry. I can actually send, I think I sent a PDF of this, so hopefully you'll receive the document.
Committee has it.
So some of this has been covered by the architect in that as best we could figure, we were trying to discern what the variance really was that was being requested. And I guess the proposed, we had figured that the proposed square footage was 224, so we might be incorrect there. I guess the bylaw allows for a 1,612 square foot build based on the footprint of property. Would that be a... Our calculations anyway came in at about 600 square feet over, or 38% over the bylaw based on the reduced footprint, but I'm not sure if we're accurate there.
Yeah, the bylaw allows 149.8 square meters, but the bylaw definitions of what gets counted and what doesn't get counted are not necessarily the same as the ultimate size of the dwelling. So
Okay.
you may get some slight discrepancies in calculations.
Okay, thank you. The second point from the Livable Oakville plan is development should be compatible with setbacks, orientation, and separation distances within the surrounding neighborhood. While we recognize the conservation area has forced the house to the street line, it does not force filling the entire space without any relief to streetscape in terms of scale and setback, and thus is not compatible with the street, nor desirable by many of the residents in this West Harbor neighborhood. Where the development represents a transition between different land use designations or housing forms, a gradation in building height should be used to achieve a transition in height from adjacent development. I understand from a conversation I had with Sean that the intention of the architect was to soften the height transition of the building frontage by adding the carport to the side between them and the house directly north, which is our neighbor, Evelyn Leslie. Is this correct? I guess I just was curious on that.
The applicant will come back at the end
Okay.
and he can address any questions that are unanswered.
Thank you. We believe the proposed structure would have an adverse effect on the neighbor's vantage of the ravine in the creek, as it will entirely block out the view as depicted currently, unlike the existing two structures. The other point, where applicable, the proposing lotting pattern of development shall be compatible with the predominant lotting pattern of the surrounding neighborhood. I'm wondering if empathy for the constrictions of this property imposed on the Morrises has provided extreme permissions for both the proposed build and variances. The desired size of the proposed house appears to stretch the full length of their lot. And then in closing, I guess the E point of roads or municipal infrastructure shall be adequate to provide water and wastewater service. I've tried to collect everyone's incoming so that I'm doing my best to kind of align it with your structure. But just to note, Forsyth is a one-way street. Traffic comes around the corner rather quickly on most occasions, heading north. It's also a bus route as well. Daily cars mistakenly go wrong on this one-way street, and in fact 2 hours ago there was a near head-on collision in front of our house as I was preparing to come to the meeting, which illustrates the reality of this. And a sidewalk is on the proposed side of the site as well, so there's only one sidewalk on Forsyth, which is on the proposed site, which means all of the pedestrian traffic coming from the bridge upwards to Queen Mary and beyond use that. So some people have concerns about the challenges of backing in and out of the proposed site with it being so close to the sidewalk, coming in and out of the Morris's carport. So visibility, safety is a concern. Finally, we saw a comment in the Conservation Authority concerned about the stable bank of the river and therefore wanted to push the building envelope towards the street. Those of us who live close to Rebecca Street Bridge, and this property in particular, have been subjected to a steady barrage of heavy construction of one sort or another for the past 5 years. During the time, there's been heightened awareness and discussions about the river bank erosion, especially following the high river water tables, lake tables last year. Frankly, it's beyond perplexing to us that this property has been approved to build anything new on it, given the very evident erosion, let alone something of the mass that is currently being proposed. The risk and liability of this endeavor has to be of some concern, or why would it have taken 18 months back and forth to gain permission? For the record, this concern we feel needs to be tabled. I believe this expresses the collective thoughts of those who are concerned with the Morris's proposal. We trust the committee will consider these concerns in as much as it relates to their governance and their representation of the community at large. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I have copies of my, I don't know
We
if I
have
should leave
copies
those as
already.
well.
Yes, they were distributed.
Great, thank you.
Any questions, committee? Sir,
Sure.
sir, if you could stay here for a minute.
Sure, sorry.
There's a question for you from Mr. Charlebois.
Maybe a couple. It was a great presentation, by the way, and a very respectful petition, and I did appreciate that and certainly took it into account. You went through a ton of stuff, and we've got 7 variances in front of us, and I just, because at the end of the day, we could approve certain variances and not other variances, or deny the whole thing. So I just wanted to ask you, only because you're representing so many people here, if you could take another, can we talk about each one of the variances and decide how, for example, those access stairs that, the building itself seems to be fine, but it's the stairs themselves that might encroach slightly. Do you think you're...
So this is the front stairs
The front
going out
stairs,
to the street?
yeah. They're going to encroach a little closer to the streetscape than a normal building would do. Is this one of the things you're objecting to, or...
Not really, I'm now you're drilling deeper, so I don't want to represent everyone's.
But you can.
But
Yeah,
personally,
they asked you to come.
They did. They volunteered me. Thank you,
Yeah.
people. I think the real issue for us is the character of the architecture, and
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, all right.
Honestly, I just wanted to.
So you want to pick away one at a time?
Just because I have
Sure.
to.
Okay,
Because I
yeah,
have to
that's
look
fine.
at each one of these things. So.
Yep.
You did talk a little bit about the garage, and you talked about access and everything like that, and you heard the comments from the applicant, as well as in the staff report, that they acknowledged that there was a problem with the street and all this sort of stuff. So they forced the applicant to not put a garage door in there. It has to be a covered carport. So that's just an architectural thing. It's not a variance asking whether they can do a carport or not.
Right.
But the variance they were asking for is typically a carport is supposed to be a certain depth. Already the depth that they have is going to encroach onto the stable top of bank. Conservation Authority has given them approval to do that, but not to go as far as a normal car would. Do you see any objections to that?
My understanding, I think the architect or the representative said that it was for one car. It appears on the rendering that there are 2 cars, or at least one of the renderings that we saw.
I'll let him speak to that.
Okay.
This is more about the depth. Do you have a concern that the depth should be 5.7 meters, but it's really 5.49?
Those are, I think, they are
Okay.
minor
All right.
variances. Yeah,
No,
so I would agree.
There's
with
no
you.
right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to get a clear thing here. There was something to do with the garage itself encroaching again to deal with this fact that it can't go all that deep. It encroaches a little closer to the street, although it's a carport, so it's not a
Right.
garage. I should point out that anybody could stop on this street with a garage or a carport or whatever and try backing in, and that's going to cause a problem. But I think what they're trying to address it here is that at least the person coming down the street can turn right in. And
Yes.
so in this particular case, the carport comes a little bit closer to the street than it should. I don't want to make a judgment, but I was going to ask you, do you see that as a
I guess
problem?
practically speaking, the pilasters that are part of the construct to integrate the facade of the house are they obstructive? I mean, that would be a
it's good
question I
point.
would have.
So it's more of a, not so much the entrance maybe, but just the massing of it and how
Yes.
close it is to the street? Okay.
Yes.
You did speak to the length of the building, so that deals with number 4 and 5.
Yes.
Objecting to the fact that it's taking up too much space. Number 6, with respect to the floor area, I can point this out that it happens in the past. It's simply the way the town calculates its residential floor area, and as the applicant mentioned, it just doesn't allow the way it's done. Just the math and the way it's in the bylaw doesn't allow them to use lands that they're not permitted to build on, even though those lands form part of the lot. And if you looked at the lot in total, as the applicant said, the square footage would be less. And I think he did point out in this case it's a 2,100 square foot building, which is not a huge building. But again, you did raise an objection to that one. I just wanted to clarify that it's a mathematical thing. If there was no top of bank there, they could build a much bigger building. And the last one, with respect to the minimum floor area, is again a peculiarity with this particular area that says if the building was 207 square meters, you're supposed to build another 207. In this case, he's asking to build a little bit less. Do you have an objection to him building less than what he's permitted to build? I'm not trying to be sarcastic.
No,
I'm
no,
really
I
just
appreciate
trying,
that.
you know, because it's all televised here. I'm just trying to deal with.
I guess the logistics of where that footage gets placed, how it's being pushed to the front of the street, and that there is no roof relief. It's pretty much a box with a very narrow beveled roof because of the, I think it was 10-foot main floor and 8-foot second floor, if I recall. It doesn't allow for the sloped or pitched roofs or the dormers that characterize virtually every house within view. An exception that comes to mind being the 3-story brick townhome directly adjacent on the south side of Rebecca.
Right.
But again, that's done in a more traditional or colonial style, and kind of could have been 100 years old versus the 15 or so that it is. So, but there are a number of new builds in our quadrant, and there are a number of new options for new builds coming up. So I guess we're concerned about precedent, and what's permitted here will be a leverage for the next developer, and eventually that changes the cosmetic character of a neighborhood. And I think that's been the thing we've tried to express to Carol and Sean, and I've been on their side of the fence. We've done 4 builds in this town, and over the years, and I appreciate and respect that they have been through the mill for 18 months with this, so I get that. But I was hoping, we've been waiting a long time for something better to happen there, and I guess we were hoping it would be more sympathetic to the streetscape. So that's in essence the core concern.
Okay. I'm going to just summarize by saying that with respect to the variances that are here, you would be objecting to variance 4 and 5, which is the interior side yards, which stretches the building
Yes.
out further than it should. You have no real objections to variance 1, 2, and 3. I'm not sure how you felt about 6. I mean, it's a difficult one. And 7, no also. So I'll leave 6 in limbo. And your other thing is that with respect to the design guidelines, you just feel that this particular building design is just not sympathetic and not compatible to the neighborhood.
That's the impression that we've been given, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. It was stated that the delegate spoke for everyone else, so there's no one else wishing to address the committee. If not, I'll ask Mr. Sakara to come back. As Mr. Charlevoix noted, the delegate raised a number of points, which I'm not going to pretend to summarize, do justice to, but one item that was raised a number of times was the concept of the building being forced to the street. As I read this, the only thing that's being moved closer to the street is an exterior stair and the carport. If you could maybe address that point for me and then speak to the comments from the delegate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did hear a number of concerns. The lot, I've been doing this for a couple of decades, and I've never seen a lot as constrained by Tapa Bank as this one is. The zoning bylaw specifically allows the dwelling to be located. There is no front yard setback to this dwelling itself. So when we're talking about bringing the mass to the street, that is not the subject of a variance here. That is permitted and contemplated by the bylaw. The only things that are not permitted to be at that location are the stair encroachment and the garage or carport. Again, being an open carport, it presents less mass, it presents less bulk on the street. You can see through it, you can see out to the valley behind it. That was definitely part of the discussions we had with the planning department when they requested that we consider a carport on this design. That was done, and that serves to reduce the amount of house at the street line. There's really no other place to put house footprint on this lot. It has to be at the street. The zoning bylaw already contemplates it at the street.
Thank you. Would you like to address any other comments made by the delegate?
So there was a couple other questions. One was about a one-car garage. In my presentation, I stated that this is for one depth, one car length or depth. So one vehicle can park. I'm going to draw my crude parking spaces. Those would be 2 parking spaces. A 2-car wide garage, 1 car deep only. And really, we can't go any shallower on the depth to be able to fit a normal vehicle. There was a question about, are the pilasters obstructive? I took that to mean, are they going to hinder the ingress or egress of a vehicle in or out of that driveway? The width of the garage or the width of the carport is wide enough to permit 2 vehicles to enter and exit, just like any other garage in the town. And the last thing was about a precedent of changing character. If you can find another lot as constrained as this in this area, that would merit consideration. And other than that, these arguments would fail on normal rectangular lots that are not constrained by such a pronounced top of bank and stable top of slope. Those are my comments, and I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you. Committee, any further questions? Mr. Charlevoix?
One of the main comments that came out of the last presentation, once you sort of sift through everything, is really about the architectural design of the building and its compatibility to the rest of this particular neighborhood, which is in itself quite unique. Were you involved in the design of the building?
I was not involved in the initial design discussions. I know it went through several iterations because of the constraints. There were different building styles contemplated. My understanding is that this building style has been determined to be the most efficient use of the land that's left for use. If we were to introduce some type of sloped roofs, peaked roofed, mansard roofs, it would only start to remove gross floor area from the interior of the dwelling, because there's really no other opportunity to put, you can't go deeper, you can't go wider. So as soon as you put roofs on, you're just starting to eat away at the second floor, and the house is already basically at the minimum of what a family can reasonably expect to live in.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the discussion and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submissions as well as the town's staff report, which I do note that they are in support of this, and taking into account the particular petition here, and certainly walking around the whole area and around this house and looking at it, I will say that when I was finished my tour, I had a lot of questions, and I could feel the same sort of negative vibe about this particular design that the rest of the residents were feeling. But I will say that's one of the reasons why I have these meetings. You did an excellent presentation. You certainly presented this building in such a way that I don't think staff could have done it in writing to actually show it. And as I look at the various variances in here, as you saw, I covered with the applicant, for me too, it really does come down to two variants. So if I look at variance 1, 2, and 3, I'm fine with those. Variance 5, I understand the technicalities, having had to deal with it before, I'm fine with that one. Sorry, 6. And variance 7, I'm fine with that. And it came down for me to with respect to variances 4 and 5, pushing the building to the outside. And then I must admit too, that from a personal touch, I didn't particularly like the design. Not necessarily that's my call. I did take a look at the neighborhood though, and I did notice that the building to the north, it also too is pushed quite, it's another top of bank situation. It's pushed fairly close to the lot line. I did look at this particular one and noted that one of the lot lines is up against a road, so we're not really talking about intruding on someone else's property. And then to the north, we're going to get into a small little park. So the building kind of sat by itself. End result is, in listening to this presentation and certainly listening to the submission from the public, which was well thought out, it's an interesting dilemma because, again, when we come down to balancing the applicant's right to make a submission, the town's written submission, as well as the public in this area, and the fact that 36 people signed a petition against it is incredible. But I find myself convinced at the end of the night that this particular application is merited. I'm going to put forward a motion that it be approved, that all variances be approved, finding it does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. Bear with me here. I'm going to make it subject to the condition that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated April 6, 2018 is submitted, and further subject to the condition that this approval will expire 2 years from the date of this decision if a building permit is not issued or the proposed development does not proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Charlevoix. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the application? Nobody is opposed. Your application is approved, and I'd like to echo Mr. Charlevoix's comments to both the community and the applicant. We thank you for every one of the more articulate discussions that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Would you like these renderings that I showed?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, this is the same site plan I submitted, but you can have it. Sure. Yep. Those and that. Sure.
Committee, we've got minutes from April 10th and 24th.
I'll put forward a motion that they be approved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Those minutes are approved.
I have an issue that we have to talk about.
Okay.
That's all in camera, isn't it, even when it's off? I just want everybody running out the door.
Motion to adjourn? Mr. Charlevoix, We are adjourned.